Hello and welcome to the dive presented by Honda. They finally let me do the intro. We have season 5, episode 31, and the LCS Finals are this weekend.
Random enunciation.
Woo!
Yeah, that's cool. That was a good intro. I guess it was fine.
That's how Jad always did. It was before your time. You wouldn't understand.
I watched the dive then. I was around. I wasn't like
Mark.
dead.
No, you didn't watch.
I was on Curse and Team Liga. I was around when this dive.
You weren't relevant.
You were a test tube, not baby, but adult.
I was grown in a lab, and then I just came out at 24.
They uncriogenical froze.
What up, y'all? They started injecting memes right into me, so I could try to assimilate
what vernacular
culture.
did they give you, though? You know, like, did you get millennial culture, or are you a Zoomer now?
I feel like he's got the the heart of a boomer.
The heart of a boomer.
I got the heart of the boomer, but I still came up on internet culture. I'm like, y'all remember those early YouTube videos, like Evolution to Dance?
Yep. Evolution of Dance.
That's a good one.
Initially the most viewed YouTube video of all time.
We talked about this like last week.
Yeah, I know. But I still remembered that, though.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, banger week of League of Legends. Kobe's not here. He's sick. Thank you, Phreak.
You're welcome.
I feel like at this point you're not even a fill-in. You're just like
the rotator.
Yeah, you're actually our inconsistent fourth member.
Yeah.
So now it's
I'm just flaky.
When you're not here, you just don't show up. Yeah, you're always.
Yeah, it's actually
always
I just decided to
all
come
the
in
time.
today.
Exactly.
We're supposed to have 4 of these. Don't you notice how it's an imbalanced desk? You have to stick them in the middle.
What do you think the center's for? Phreak is supposed to be.
I thought it was going to be 2 and 2. Is what
No,
you're
it's
saying.
Phreak's
painting
in the middle of
backwards.
his contract.
It's a 360 degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And then your solo shot is just above you.
I know.
It's just like a drone.
Yeah, it's just above.
Straight up.
Yeah, it's a mirror. You can see the camera. Good.
All right.
Trying
Well,
today.
we had a sick week of League of Legends. Gen.G T1, Fnatic G2, TSM C9. We had so many iconic names battling it out, and I think it was kind of cool, especially between EU and NA, the amount of parallels. Like the 2 most famous, the 2 most accomplished orgs in the region. It's not the finals. It's not, the semifinals. It's for third, fourth, right? It's battling for that last spot. Of course, they could go on to win, from the lower bracket, but it's just interesting to see like how much things have changed. I think especially in the LEC, it feels like, the kind of old dogs are falling down. It has been more and more Mad and Rogue and those kind of teams rising up. And this year in NA, 100 Thieves, I think shaking things up, really was the biggest reason that one of those teams got pushed out.
Yep.
I think the thing you're saying about the parallels is interesting too, because like you said, like Team Liquid has a lot of names that we've seen for a long time. It's a lot of veterans. I do like how, even though Closer has been around for a while and Abadag has been around for a while, FBI, Huhi are still somewhat like Huhi's swapping to support. It does feel more new bloody. I think that they're probably the newest blood of our teams, you could say.
Even though Someday's been playing League since
like forever. Yeah. I mean, I understand it's not like a core group of young, like hot rookies coming out and being like, yeah, we're taking names, but it is still at least a new org and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and compared to, I think some of the other players, like Abadag is like newer than some of these other guys.
Yeah, he's not.
Obviously.
He's newer than Perkz.
Huhi since his role swap, FBI in general. So it is interesting. And just like org history wise, right? 100 Thieves obviously just came in with franchising. They had their one final result where they got 3-0'd. They had their kind of like unceremonious exit from Worlds, and they've been trying to get back to this point and rebuild to this point. So it was really exciting. And I mean, it's interesting, both G2 and TSM. I mean, I would say those are the teams at the forefront of each league, at least regionally, right?
Mm-hmm. Most fans.
I'm sure.
Well, Fnatic's close.
Yeah, I was gonna say most popular, but then I realized, Fnatic. I don't know. I think Fnatic's probably been more popular.
Yeah,
I'm not actually
G2 may have
sure.
surpassed them, but
yeah, G2 is definitely more successful as far as like regional titles. You're looking G2 just like won every time for so long.
Yeah.
And TSM, of course, has like 7 titles. Both those teams not making it. Both those teams with a lot of veterans. G2 especially. It's this roster that brought European League of Legends to the forefront of the scene, right? It's this roster that, yes, they're missing Perkz, and people are always going to point to that. But I mean, Reckless is filling in for him, one of the most famous players ever. They take the biggest star from their biggest rivals, Fnatic, and then are kicked out of Worlds, kicked out of playoffs by that team. Like, that is oof.
Who also role swapped their top laner to jungle and took on a rookie top laner who was not even top 3 in EU Masters. So like like that, I mean, hey, props to Fnatic, right? Like, I mean, that's a really good job, pulling an upset over. Hey, I mean, that man's outstanding. So cool to see him, still going strong. Like he's a really, really, really good player. Like props to Whippo. I think he's maybe my favorite player in Europe. I love that guy. He's amazing. And he fit into jungle quite well. Like, good job. And hey, shout out to Adam, who just like, yeah, rookie season, let's go. It's like, cool, all right, world's top 3, like let's get a title.
On that point about like G2 versus TSM a little bit, like TSM's empire in terms of performance had kind of crumbled during that TL streak of 4 straight wins. And you know, they're obviously still super popular and you want them to go as far as they can because it's like, hey, more viewers, sign me up. But the G2 is like the actual end of the era. It feels like after the struggles in spring and summer, not making worlds, it's kind of like, ooh, as you said, they were what brought Europe so much fame and prominence for the last 2.5 years. And even like, you know, the Korean players are like, oh, they're like a broken toy now. Like that whole meme that was getting talked about, like, it's true. It just feels like a different phase for League esports.
They're the only Western major title since season 1.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, obviously NA has none. Europe had Fnatic season 1, but most people are kind of like, at this point.
China couldn't compete, like all this.
Compete. But before Korea had a server, you know, but they are a recent MSI champion, right? And this is a team that has done so much, I think, you know, not only for Europe, but also for the game, you know, being some of the pioneers of proactivity, aggressive play, of, you know, playing these like really in their kind of like heyday at their greatest success. It was all about like these lane swapping, you know, like playing like 1-3-1 style comps, picking a Kali and Aurelia that could actually be, you know, mid or top, being really flexible, bringing out aggressive picks, mid pike, top pike, like all these crazy things. Like they innovated in so many ways that I think really them having that international success pushed LCK and LPL and NA and really every region everywhere to kind of reevaluate what the best way to play League of Legends was. And I think that was like so important for the evolution and the growth of the game. And so it's crazy to think, well, it's probably the end of that roster, right? Like I just can't see, you know, G2 and Carlos, because he does seem like such a hyper competitive person, coming into next year with the exact same roster, having not made worlds this year, right? It feels like changes will be made. A lot of people were super critical of some of the players and plays, but I definitely think you have to kind of give a nod and give some respect to like how much they've accomplished.
Which is a lot, yeah. I mean, we're utilizing G2. They are maybe the most. I think they are just the most impressive English-speaking League of Legends team. I think I would take them over like old Seal GEU. I mean, Moscow 5 spoke Russian, so, you know, we're just like discounting that for like a language barrier thing. But as far as Western teams, I still take them over like Moscow 5 Gambit. Like, like you know, if they come back next year, right, and they're good again, and it's a new roster, it's still G2, right? If Caps is still there, like if you know Mickey's still there, I know Reckless is now, you know, switched over, but like, okay, well now you're gonna be part of this legacy now as well, right? Assuming he stays around, like, okay, they can just come back and it's still G2, and it's like, well, we had that one blip, you know, we lost out that one year where we got, I think they made finals in spring, and then okay, 4th in summer is like not great from your pedigree, but like you still got 4th in the LEC, like you're not trash, you just are the 4th best team in the 3rd best league in the world. It's like, okay, but get better from there.
I think so. It does raise an interesting point when we talk about Caps. And so there's a Twitter question we got from Hush Lol. He said, so seeing as G2 didn't make worlds and C9 did, how much does this open the gap between Perkz and Caps for the Western GOAT? And then he says, personally, I thought Caps was catching up fast, but now is Perkz in a league of his own. It's an interesting question because like as soon as, you know, G2 lost, it wasn't just, hey, G2 lost. Suddenly there's this Perkz element where it's like, well, this is what you get, you know, for benching or getting rid of what is the soul of that team in a lot of people's eyes. So it was a very messy kind of loss for G2 beyond just like the era type stuff we're talking about, but also the personal side of it and the competitive side. So Perkz gets to continue building his legacy internationally where Caps is still at home. I was personally in the Caps camp as the greatest Western player of all time.
Me too.
With the double finals appearance and some of this kind of stuff. I thought Perkz was number 2, but you know, this does potentially open it up. Do you think, if you're in the Caps camp, what would you have to do to have this swap?
I mean, I just don't think like this one best of 5 matters in that discussion at all. I actually think no matter which side you're on, this should be irrelevant. Like this is such a footnote. Unless you think Perkz is going to go on to win the title and then like win worlds or whatever.
So as soon as he wins worlds, it's like instantly over.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you win worlds, sure, but like, what if C9 went on a great run and made semis again because of Perkz?
Well, then I think you definitely are leaning more towards the Perkz side, right? And I think there's also a lot of people that already were on the Perkz side, right? I think it depends on like who you favor. I think as far as like peak skill in mid lane, Caps has been better, and I don't think that like a lot of people will argue that. I think that felt true when he was on Fnatic, and then he joined G2, and of course they accomplished incredible things together. So I have felt that like peak Caps was better than peak Perkz in mid lane, like when they were matching up and everything. But I also feel like some of the argument for Perkz is like how much he did for the team beyond that, like as far as like leadership qualities, as far as the ability to go from being a world elite level mid laner swap and then win an international title in another role, like instantaneously, in a role that people always said was like, you know, so mechanical and like you can't just do that, you know, like maybe you could swap to an easy role like support, but you know, like no one really like did this, and I think so there's a lot to be said for that, like the level of success he had at 2 positions, then went back to mid and was instantly first team All-Pro in EU again for mid lane. So like he is just insanely good, has been insanely good for a really long time. I believe he has more regional titles than Caps because G2 I think was winning even when Caps was on Fnatic. So there's some element of that. Obviously he won in spring. If he wins again here in summer, it's like, well, he's one of a couple players who have won in multiple regions. So I think it's an interesting discussion. It's an interesting argument. I don't think that this weekend changed how I feel about it at all.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the accolades, right? Because, okay, they won MSI. Okay, that was together.
Yeah.
The G2 World Final, that was together.
Yep.
So Perkz has an extra World Final to, sorry, Caps has an extra World Final to Perkz' World Semis.
Semis, yeah.
Yeah, he went to Semis, you know, with a really good series over RNG, which is like, hey, very impressive, good job. Like, you know, that's no slouch of a play. But it's like, okay, well, you know, you still have that difference. I don't know if 2 semis makes a final, right? Like if he goes to semis with C9, I still think Caps has done more internationally. Maybe 2 semis and 4 more domestic titles is as good as a final, right? But like that's what you're horse trading at this point. It's like, well, I just need to see their world final. Like realistically, I kind of need to see that.
Is that all it's down to though? Like, is it just the hardware, right? Because kind of the discussion is also like, I feel like at a certain point, it almost becomes somewhat irrelevant. Like they both have so many titles and so many accomplishments that it's just like who plays better, right? You know, that's
who's more important to the team.
Yeah, who's more important to the team. And that's what it kind of comes down to me. It's like, does really like one more 3-0 loss in the finals like make like I don't even mean it as flame, right? I just like it's not a title. Like he didn't win Worlds. I do think that is a significant difference. I don't necessarily think losing in the semifinals to a team that maybe then goes on and wins Worlds is worse than than losing to that team in finals.
If you really want to get nitty gritty too into those runs, you know, it's like, well, one team played like not trying to flame it, but like one team played IG. And one team played Cloud9. And like, if you swap those 2 teams, probably one of them is in the finals and the other one's not now.
Yeah.
So like when you start breaking it down, you know, some of the accomplishments have a little bit more of a story behind them.
Yeah. And I think that it's like pretty equivalent as far as like what they have accomplished, or at least it's in the same ballpark. So it's interesting, you know, and I think that what I will say is that Perkz' time away from Caps now is lending more shine to Perkz than is for Caps. I'll say that much. I do think the fact that G2, all of a sudden, with this ADC that was considered one of the best, if not the best ever in Europe, with Reckless joining, a lot of G2 fans, a lot of discussion that I saw on socials was this team is going to be so much better. You know, now we have like
Reckless.
Now we have an even better ADC. And a lot of the discussion I've seen over the course of the year is actually like, holy shit, what did Perkz do for this team, right? And even Yanko's talking on stream, there was a lot of discussion about that, where he came out and he was saying, I realized that I had to step up as a leader because like Perkz just did all these things, and Perkz was the one that like focused us up, and Perkz was the one that, you know, like made people practice more, made people like pay more attention in a series or stop joking around or whatever, right? Like just a lot of the things that he did for the team was now missing. And I think that kind of lends more to his legacy when it's like all of a sudden this missing piece, even though you add another incredible player, another player with, you know, huge amount of mechanical skill, the team is just way worse.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the spring side too. C9 made MSI, won the championship.
Sure. Yep.
G2 did not. So
it's 2 splits in a row immediately after the swap where Perkz is, you know, outperformed domestically. You could argue, you know,
I think we could argue.
Well, a lot of people will argue strength of region.
Sure. Yeah. And I understand that, but you know, hey, the results are the results. The final thing I want to say, because I want to go back to sort of my point about like, you know, does a final equal whatever, is like I kind of dislike the idea of like, hey, does getting blown out 3-0 final matter? It's like you got a silver medal at a world championship, right? Yeah. Like let you know, sort of call it what it is. Like the man has 2 world championship silver medals. Like that's really impressive. And
to be clear, I'm not saying getting to finals doesn't matter.
I know.
I'm just saying is getting the silver medal better than getting the bronze medal and losing to the same team that the silver medalist lost to? That's all I'm saying, right? And so like we're comparing achievements that are incredible, and I do think that getting second or even getting semifinals at Worlds is incredible in a game and that 100 million people play a month and is the biggest esport in the world, and it's at the biggest esport in the event in the world by far. Yes, it matters a lot. And so I just want to say that. And you can disagree with like the evaluation, but I wasn't trying to belittle the accomplishment. I'm comparing it to another one that I consider to be of similar magnitude.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, I just want to like put it out there, even less like to you than more to for the audience. Like, hey, we should think about the fact that like it's 2 World Championship silver medals. Team Liquid have an MSI silver medal.
I would love a silver medal right about now. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
Team Liquid have a silver medal. Doesn't go away. We still got that.
Yeah, you're guaranteed a silver medal.
I'm in a
for the
world
LCS.
silver. I want the world silver.
Yeah,
or gold.
Yeah. But just, just to give credit, because this is something that I think we're getting a little off topic, but like the idea that people losing in the finals feel worse people who like won in the third.
Yeah.
Like that's like something that I believe has been studied to a certain degree.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah. It's like, let's give credit where it's due to all the teams who do really, really well, where they place top 3 in the world at something, because I want that credit to be given because it's like well-deserved.
It's incredible. And I think that like from my own experience, looking back on a second place finish, I could be happier than a third place finish. But in the moment, like if there's a third place match and you win it, you just feel better.
You go to the finals the next day and you watch the other team lose, and those guys are all depressed, and you're like, well, I'll go party now.
Well, the funniest to me is always Olympic medal ceremonies, because they give out all the medals at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So there's a third place match, and so it's like hockey or whatever, right? Yeah. And one team popping off, they're jumping up and down, they're screaming, they're like singing the national anthem, right? And then they go to the second place team and they are depressed.
Yeah.
And it's just because they give the medals right after their game, right? Yeah. Right after they just got slammed, or barely lost or whatever. So it is funny, but interesting discussion for sure. And I'm sure people will continue having those debates for many years to come.
Moving on down the list of things that happened this week, Fudge got the most improved award. Mm-hmm. Any strong opinions on that?
I voted for him.
I voted for him
too.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I think the award is a little bit unclear. It's like that's part of where some of the discussion came from. It's like, is it the best from last year to this year? Is it the best from day one of this year to this year? Is it like, you know what I mean? Like, is it if someone was bad at the start of the year but was amazing last year, does that count? So I think there's like some confusion over like what you're voting on. For me, I voted for day one of this year to now this year.
Because the other one I call the comeback award. Yeah. Which can be in pro sports. Typically, it's someone who was out of the league or like, got an injury and then bounced back. But it can mean a lot of people who just like, for whatever reason, 1 year to the next year had a big improvement. Yeah. Whereas most improved is usually for me within a single year. How I've always looked at it.
I mean, he was incredible when you look at. Like, most people were looking at him as the star of Cloud9 by the end of summer, like as the best player in summer split. And you compare that to Lock-In, and I know this has been referenced a million times, but it's like he was the reason they were losing their games. Yeah. Right? Like he was actively hurting their chances to win. And now he's insane. He was really good at MSI. He was like a standout in so many of their games, even their losing games as a playmaker. He's really good in lane. He's really good in team fights. He seems to be able to play multiple styles. Like he's a star. And I think it's pretty insane how much he has done. There's been a lot of talk about like Danny and how young he is lately, because he just won Rookie of the Year, but like Fudge is 18, if not still 17. Like he was the youngest player in the league before Danny joined the league. So these guys are babies and they're playing this well. It's like, it's insane. I just think that's awesome. I love seeing young players reach highs that are that high this early in their career, because I'm like, damn, I get to watch you for like 8 more years or more.
Right. I mean, you think about Caps, aka Baby Faker, as people like to call him. It's like, that man's still incredible. Sorry, you're not going to see Worlds this year, but like, that man's going to keep have a career, right?
Like middle-aged Faker now.
Yeah, sure. But I Faker himself, right? He's going back to Worlds like that. It's still really good. It's like, it's great to see people, pop off at the start. And it's like, all right, but 7 years later, you actually still have it. And then like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's cool that we still haven't really seen all of the first generation. I mean, I guess the real OGs. Yeah, most of them have.
If you went to season 1 Worlds, it's
season 1, season 2, but start of LCS, start of LCK, these kinds of teams, there's still players from that era. Yeah, still going. Yeah. Like
Baker won the 2013 World Championship. He's going back to Worlds
around.
Yeah,
Turtle. Some of those guys are still there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them are just like starting to retire now over the last year or two. Obviously, Doublelift, Bjergsen both just retired. Like Soaz and guys like that retiring. That is kind of like an end of an era, and we're seeing so many new stars come up. Obviously, already have, but yeah, it does make it really exciting. And there's been a lot of discussion also about Worlds and people kind of getting hyped watching TL.
Get hyped?
Who were playing really well. I mean, TL in the regular season was like, ooh, not looking so hot. They're back together. Santorin's feeling good. I presume he's playing incredible. Alphari's looking amazing. The team looks better than ever. I think people were a little bit cooled on their last series, but like overall, their playoffs run has been insane, and people are kind of getting excited and like, oh my god, like
they're actually good.
Are we going to do well at Worlds? Are we going to beat Europe? And then CoreJJ comes out and says, yeah, all the other regions suck.
Yeah,
I blame them all the time.
I think we have a chance. They look pretty trash. He didn't quite say it that aggressively in the interview with Travis, but it was the same idea, same energy.
Yeah. And the ceiling is there, like to be very copped up on Hopium. It's like, hey, at MSI TL, they beat the defending world champions. At MSI this year, Cloud9, they went 1-1 G2, they went 1-1 with Delmon Kia, they had like the 1-1 with RNG, like if our best can punch at their weight, they'll also lose to Australia.
That's some stuff.
They'll lose to Pabu. They'll lose to Pabu, but
it's been cut
they'll also lose some games. They'll beat these other teams. So
back in the day,
just like the ceiling is clearly reasonably close.
It's been cut with reality.
It's been cut with reality. It's great.
What is that? It's like
just saying,
dishwasher.
The ceiling is reasonably close. A good year could make it happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's true, right? Like even you look at TL last year at Worlds, they had a brutal start. They ended up going 50-50. They ended up taking games off some of the best teams, and they ended up falling out in groups, right? And that has happened to us so many times where our teams are on the precipice of getting
loss.
out. Yeah, where we go 3-3. They have like it's the classic to lose to the wild card team, right? You like bad start. Beat a good team, yes. Now all we have to do is beat X team we're supposed to beat. We lost.
Damn it, Flash Wolves.
So that has happened a million times, and that definitely could happen. But I'm excited. I think TL looks good. I'm always excited for Worlds.
Worlds is just no matter what, I don't care.
Yeah,
I'll watch any just good people play. Upsets happen. Like when a wildcard region upsets a major region, even when it's NA or otherwise, it's still hype.
Yeah,
I'm still like, oh my god, they picked, I don't know, they power
picked
farmed
a completely standard draft and beat.
That's usually not what happened.
That's what happened with Benjanet.
That one was. Let's talk about something. I was thinking, Vietnam.
You're talking about Gam, and stuff, and like the 4-minute level 6 nocturne or whatever.
Power farm thing.
But yeah, no, I mean, I feel you. I'm excited. I think that the individual player skill on TL and on Cloud9 and and on some of these teams, like I think those two in particular, because I do just tend to think that their skill cap is higher than 100 Thieves. Whether or not they actually beat 100 Thieves, that remains to be seen. But I think that if they play at their peak, they can do some damage at Worlds, and that's exciting. And we'll have to see if that actually happens. But either way, pretty cool stuff, and I really enjoyed the last weekend, and I'm pretty excited for this weekend coming up.
All right. Anything else you want to touch on before we move on to the Honda MVP?
I'm happy. I mean, we could flame Wunder about picking Yuumi top.
That was in there. I didn't know if you wanted.
I mean, the Wunder thing. It feels like it's weird because I feel like people always touted this, like the fact that like Wunder plays WoW and stuff is like as this like awesome thing, and then as soon as he has a bad series, everyone is just it feels like shitting on him. And my impression from I got so many tweets about like, yeah, should Wunder retire? Like, how do you and he played bad. He did play bad, right? Like the level 1 GP death Renekton is like absolutely troll. The game he died, I think it was like as Camille into Darius, where Darius, like Adam tried to dive him. He solo kills him because Adam overdove and he had hookshot up and he stuns him. Then he just stays at 10% HP and like lets him kill him when he TPs back. Like both of those were like absolutely trolling. Like they were really bad. But the guy has been one of the best top laners like in the world for so many years. And I don't think that like I feel like people are going 0 to 100 so fast on how bad he is to the point where it's just like super exaggerated and super over the top.
I also feel like it's the kind of thing where there's like different voices, It's like while he was on top and crushing on WoW, there's probably a lot of people who think that was not good practice. But they can't say that then, and they're holding.
Also, how much is he really playing? Is it not just part of the G2 shtick?
Part of it is, part of it isn't. I've heard different levels where sometimes it's like, oh, he plays WoW in his free time. And then times where it's like, he hasn't touched solo queue in a week. But either way, I feel like people, had this bullet in the chamber ready to fire. And then the clip of, Adam telling the story about the Yuumi thing as well was another one that just gave you another bullet to slap into that revolver. Because it is pretty funny. I mean, it's not that weird, actually, when you have a LCS team scrimming an amateur team. That like the academy team has an ego, or excuse me, the LCS team has an ego, and if they think you're trolling scrims, a lot of times they'll have something like that happen. It's actually not as rare as you would think, and I know a lot of people are flaming Wunder for picking Yuumi into it, which is probably a worse way of reacting to it than most people. But I do think I have an ego playing a player and team I think is worse than me. I'm going to complain about it. Like that actually does happen a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I blow it out a little bit, right? It's the idea that, hey, this thing actually happens 13 times a week across the world. This is just the one you've heard about. And it's like
something like that.
And it's like, okay, well, someone took a screenshot of it happening with Wunder, but like 7 other LEC top laners did this across this year, and another 15 other in Korea did this, but you just didn't see screenshots of it. But we're flaming Wunder, even though it's a systemic problem. And it's like,
people over scrims over the course of a year, get fed up at some point and do something childish. Like it's not that. I'm not defending.
It's immature and it's
immature, but this is the one you know about, and you're making it a Wunder problem, not a systemic problem.
Yeah. And this one is probably more extreme, like the actual locking in a full troll pick to like run it down. But like, there are so many scrims I've watched where people are legit trolling, like running it down. Like they don't, and people like any pro will tell you this. One of the number one things when you ask pros, and I've talked to pros from other regions, same thing happens in different places, where if you're playing a pick that they don't think is a real pick, like they complain. With the Olaf, they complain, or they literally will just fight you to the death over and over until it's a bunch of kills and then remake. And I had that told to me by multiple people from multiple regions that people don't think it's good practice. So even if they don't like refuse to play the game, they will basically troll the game and then ban it for every other scrim so that they don't have to play against that pick that they think is a waste of their time.
I mean, it's true. It's been I have so many stories about this. There's a time where Dignitas picked 5 TPs. And like no flashes, and we're like combat summoners only, and just like TPing around the map to fight us. And I was like, this is the worst scrim practice I've ever had in my life. Like there's just so many of these that happen that you're like, all right, dude, whatever. And so he probably felt like that was one of those situations, and so he trolled back, kind of thing. And I don't know.
It seems to be like the problem with not having an effective practice squad, and it's hard, right? Because how are you going to get players good enough to play against your main squad? Like, there's not a lot of teams in LC with an academy team as good as their LCS team, so good luck getting right practice. But that's what it comes down to. It's like, well, yeah, I want to start practicing Mordekaiser jungle, and it's like, well, if I'm TSM scrimming whoever, it's like I'm never playing against Mordekaiser jungle. This is not helpful in any way. Like my jungle 1v1s don't matter, the gank pathings don't matter. Like none of this is important. I'm wasting half an hour playing you, and it's like, well, but really only TL has an academy team good enough to do this, so only TL can practice this way because everyone else's academy teams aren't good enough. So.
Yeah, and to the point that I know a lot of people are going to make, it's like, well, he locked it in already, just take it seriously, because guess what? He ended up having to play against it, kind of thing. And that's true. Like the correct emotional and like,
it is flame worthy.
It is flame worthy. Not defending him, just saying that it happens all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, to your point, my stance has always been, and like I've told this to a bunch of coaches and people I've talked to, I just think teams should be trading practice, where it's like you tell them in advance, hey, we are looking to practice Mordekaiser jungle. We will give you we want 3 games of this, and then guess what? The next scrim block, you play some shit that you want to experiment with, and we will play.
Tell us our comp even, whatever.
Like I just think that is so normal in so many games and in so much practice, where people give a prescribed style that they want their opponents to play, and like that is how you get orchestrated practice. Yeah, because if everyone's trolling everything, it's not a real game. But if you have a pocket pick you want to practice against standard metacomp, well then do a trade. You play your Mordekaiser for 3 games, and then guess what? You get to play any top for 3 games or whatever. Who cares, right? Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal, and I do think we're kind of getting to like a practice culture thing.
Yeah,
but it is a practice culture thing, right? It's ultimately a practice culture thing, and I think it's the right place to take the conversation. I agree with you, by the way.
Cool. All right, now let's move on to some LCS playoff stuff with the Honda MVP this week. Who is your playoffs MVP so far? Azael was talking a lot of smack before this about how he's got the best answer. You think it's Alphari?
Yeah, it's just Alphari.
Yeah,
the end.
I think maybe.
Yeah,
this is your opinion.
I think that it hasn't. I actually don't think it's close, and I think that it's like almost troll to give another answer.
Well, I'm going to give you another answer.
Yeah, I knew you are. And this is why I said, Mark was like, hey, I hope we did this. I'm like, sure, but I think we're all going to have the same answer. He's like, no, we won't.
Well,
I'm like,
before I
okay, sure, you'll have the wrong answer then.
Too. You have the same answer?
So initially I said Spica, but I think you need to be winning the LCS for you to get the trophy.
Well, it is
so far. Spica is a defensible answer, I think.
Yep.
It's probably second place behind Alphari, but like he is still clearly, after watching all the games, definitely been the best player on TSM, which is clearly like a pretty good team. They got fourth, like they're not bad. Spica has stood out really heavily. I might just replace that with Closer.
I was about to, so that's the one I was going to actually use, because even though they lost that series against TL, Closer was a beast, and he was getting the better of Santorin, who was probably another defensible pick because he was really big in the first two series. Santorin had the best two series, and then I'd say across three, Alphari's had better across the three.
I just think Alphari has been like so far and away the best top laner that it's not even funny. Like he's just winning like every single lane. He's playing different styles. They have beat every team that's remaining in playoffs, you know, like, and they beat TSM, right? Like those were their three series. It's just like, I just find it so hard to argue against him when it's like, we're going to play through Alphari and there's nothing you can do about it. TSM, number one in the regular season, team that, you know, you're talking about being pretty darn good. Yeah, they are pretty darn good. Yeah. Guess what? Their entire strategy against TL was pick red side, counter pick top, and non-stop camp Alphari the whole time. And it didn't work at all. In fact, TSM completely gave up on playing red side because it failed so hard, right? It's like, I just think he is like uniquely amazing in his laning phase. I think that there are other top laners that can team fight like he can. But he has just shown that like when he is playing his best, he is easily one of the best laning top laners in the world, period.
Yeah.
Like, and he is by far the best in the league.
All right. So let me tell you that you're wrong.
Uh-huh.
You're not really wrong. But
wow.
let me make the case for you. Okay, Closer, 3.8 kills and assists at 15, highest in the playoffs right now. I'm using playoff stats. He's absolutely dominating the early game, harder than actually even Alphari is. His gold difference at 15 is 680. Alphari's is 570. I would say
he played an entire series where there's three people laning against him.
And he had three people laning for him too. What do you think CoreJJ's roam percent was in some of these series? He's getting help. He's not like on an island just
absolutely
throwing
getting help.
Poop at the enemy.
He's absolutely getting help, but I think that it's a bit of a different situation. Like comparing jungle to top lane is not comparing apples to apples.
He's got the highest jungle procs in the league.
He played great.
Top lane. Yeah, I'm saying for Alphari, he's great. He's an incredible player. I'm not saying you're wrong. Yeah. But in terms of sheer domination of position, Closer's actually dominating harder in the playoffs than Alphari is respective to his opponents.
I don't know. I feel like Spica was playing pretty incredible.
If you close your eyes and just look at the stats.
How do you look at your stats with closed eyes, Mark?
Like, here's the thing where you absolutely have me is the game planning point about like how hard people have to deal with Alphari, and this is why I will ultimately agree with you. But I think like how, you know, even 100 Thieves are like, well, screw it.
But if you pretend I'm wrong, then you can be right.
I think there's an angle you can take that I was trying to take, but I don't agree with, which is that in terms of pure statistical domination, actually Closer's the most dominant player in playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think Closer has played great, but like I feel so strongly that it's like if there was a vote, it's Alphari, and like the rest of the ballot doesn't matter.
Nope, it's
Alphari.
Closer
KDA 2.4 at 15. Closer 8.5.
I literally could not care less about these.
No, definitely
these
Closer.
3.8 kills and assists
also,
at 15.
I got more because Closer's late games is better than Alphari's. So not only is he better statistically early game, he's actually better just watching the games in late game. So he's just all around better player.
Who got solo pentacled by Danny, huh?
Who lost at 12,000 gold team fight?
No, it wasn't.
Who was up 15,000
it was
12,000 gold and lost to Closer? Alphari.
All right.
Boom.
Checkmate.
Roasted.
Sweet.
Like some bell peppers in a pan.
Okay. Well, we lost TSM, EG, and Immortals this week. So F, pay respects. And it's interesting to think about like what they will look like next year. I think that the biggest one on everyone's mind is definitely TSM. I think there's questions about like will EG keep all their roster, but like expectation versus reality, EG did pretty good. They maybe could have made Worlds. They did well in the regular season, I think. They obviously spent some money, so maybe there will be changes and maybe the contracts are expiring. I think Immortals have always talked about themselves as a development team. Literally, Gil Otto in their like during their series
game one interview,
and he's like, "Well, we're pretty happy, you know." Like it basically sounded like they didn't think they were going to win, but like they had accomplished their goal, right? So most people, I think, as far as like, ooh, what's going to happen, are focused on TSM. They spent more than they've ever spent before on Sword Art. Sword Art's pretty good. He's clearly not worth what they paid. I think that like almost anyone would agree with that. And that's not a shot at Sword Art. Like, congrats, you got paid. That's awesome.
Yep.
But
He's
like,
very good.
He's very good. But I think that there are two supports that are for sure better than him in the league. I don't know like about the intangibles, but like I would for sure rather have CoreJJ and Vulcan on my team, and I might rather have Huhi on my team too. And when you are like the most paid player in the league, probably by a lot, like it's pretty crazy. Like I don't know about the yearly salary of Perkz versus him, but I had heard that Sword Art is making over $3 million a year, and so it's like that's double what Jensen gets. That's like triple what Alphari gets. And Vulcan is probably making a couple 100,000, so you could have like 10 Vulcans or one Sword.
Yeah,
like
make a team of Vulcans. They'll probably do pretty good.
So it's interesting to think about like what they will do. I'm not sure how long that contract was. They may be locked in for a while, but like I just never think it makes a ton of sense to go so big on a support as soon as they lost Doublelift, right? And I think that was the intent when they started shopping around for like a superstar support was, well, we have the best AD in North American history. Like we have Doublelift, and we want to see if we can go further than he's been able to go. So we're going to give him like the best support we can financially provide. Things obviously didn't work out, whatever. Doublelift is no longer there. They have Lost. I think Lost is fine. But I think fine is not what TSM is looking for. And it's not just about Lost, right? Like this could go any number of ways. I also think as much as I think PoE is like elite level mid laner, I think he's really good. There's like a tier list. And for me, the tier list in every role is you can play everything well. That's number one, of course, like, cause congrats, you're Faker.
Yep.
Number two is you can play some things really well. And then number three is you can play like everything okay. You know what I mean? So it's like I would way rather have PoE than someone who's just like okay or like at everything but can play more stuff, or bad at some things, Like PoE is incredible at control mages. And I think he's as good as pretty much anyone in the world at control mages. But every other mid laner that was in the top four, like look at all these top three mid laners, they're all way more flexible than him. They all were able to pick different comps and play different styles because of what their mid laners can do. TSM can't really do that, right? And even very clearly on some of the control mage picks that are considered in his wheelhouse, his opponents don't even really respect him. And Sven was giving in his post-game interview on the AD, he's like, yeah, when he picked Ryze, like we like went Aurelia because we know he can't play that. And so it's like, it is a disadvantage. I think that it's not necessarily like, hey, they got to replace him or anything like that, but there are weaknesses on the team, and clearly TSM wants to dominate. Clearly they're putting in more money, not less. So I do expect there to be some changes. Where it's going to be, I'm not sure. I think Cooney had a pretty good year. I think Spica is for sure safe because he's young and because he dominated. He's like player. He's probably going to be the MVP. It would be my guess. Like he was who I voted for.
Wow, spoilers.
Well, we already talked about that before.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because they were so close to winning that series. That was a crazy series, back and forth. Arguably should have 3-0'd before they kind of lost that.
So close to making it to Worlds.
Yeah, and they're so close to making it to Worlds. They're so close to, continuing that loser bracket run. Who knows? Could be hyping them up right now if a couple things went different in the series.
Totally.
And because that didn't happen, now it's such a failure. Like a couple little differences in skill suddenly means like, oh, you guys got to do something different probably. And I don't disagree with what you're saying either, because they didn't make finals either split. They didn't make Worlds this time. They have higher aspirations. I went back to check our summer split power rankings. I had them fourth, Kobe had them fourth, you had them third. So like even with all this effort and resources they're putting in, no, we didn't think that they would prior to this split. Some of us make Worlds even, or it would be really close. And it was. So to that point.
And that was off of the off-season pickups, right? Yeah. That was off of like Sword Art versus Abadaga versus Alphari versus Perkz.
Well, in spring and in summer when they got Abadaga, because that's when I think 100 Thieves rose for some people. But to this point, it's almost not even unexpected. Them getting first in the regular season is something we've talked a lot about. But like, how much of that is them versus Santorin having migraines and like something that happened in Alphari's personal life and Jat leaving? Like TL went through a tumultuous thing. Like, were they actually going to be the best team, or were they just able to be the most consistent team over a stretch of time that gave them this reward? But peaks, they never hit the same peaks as C9 or TL or even 100 Thieves.
I mean, I'd say that they had the same record as 100 Thieves and Evil Geniuses, 100 Thieves who are ahead of them, EG who are behind them, right? So, like, they were as good as those other two teams who put the same records fourth as them, right? And okay, yeah, TL was probably held down over here. Cloud9, I guess they played with King a little bit, but
they
like
play with King.
But like I mean even then, like
just inconsistent.
Sven comes back and Cloud9 is still like what 4 games behind TSM during the regular season, and it's like that's not all because of King. That's just because Cloud9 didn't play very well in the regular season. The one thing I want to kind of point out, you talked about flexibility. I agree with your point in general. I just want to point out like a specific detail to this split, which is the priority picks right now in the mid lane are just all mages. Like you look at any league in the world, any mid laner, it's all just Azirs and stuff. Like there are occasional Relias, and to your point, Perkz played it twice, but most pro players in most top regions and most top teams are just playing mages. So it's actually a decent metagame for PoE. What's funny is in the regular season when we were having all the set and Lee Sin and Lucian that he wasn't as good at, and yet that's when TSM were the best performing team instead of the fourth best performing team.
So counterpoint, Jensen has played a number of Lee Sin games during the playoffs.
Sure.
We got the Aurelia games from Perkz. And another thing, even if you know that like he is as good as the most common pick, you don't have the threat of a flex pick.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that matters so much. When TSM first picked Lee Sin, did you ever believe for a second or even consider that PoE was going to play it? No. Right? Exactly. And this is not to like start the crusade against PoE. I think, as I said, I think he's literally world elite at one style. I'm just saying, you know, and this is true of literally every player. If you have one style that you're elite at and the others are not as good, you're not as good as someone who's good at everything. Surprise, surprise.
Well, and to the thing that Sven said in the interview, you know, like his Rise is a 41% win rate career on 12 games. Not the biggest sample size or whatever, but I think you can say that even if it's a control mage, which fits in with your meta point, like LeBlanc and Rise, who are two of the higher priority ones, are still not front to back team
LeBlanc
fighters.
is the mid laner in
and she is not. I mean, Sindri is pretty close to a standard mid laner, but it's not Ori, Azir, Victor, which are his most played with Syndra, right? Like it's a substantial drop off to the rest of these control mages, which actually function quite different in gameplay.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's still just more pointing about the fact that like when you actually had to play Set, Nocturne, Lee Sin, which was regular season, like they were actually the best champions, you actually had to pick them as opposed to just like, well, was it flexible? Again, still a downgrade to not be able to play the champions, but it was more stark in the regular season, and TSM still had the best record. So it's like they were, to your point about being elite, like they were able to play through that regardless, even with lackluster Lucian skills. And
they actually did better when they just played what wasn't the meta,
right.
Ironically, right?
Yeah.
Like they were actually just playing the better champion of Lucian, because guess what? It's better to be amazing at the wrong champion than it is to be okay at the right champion. Yeah, and I always believe that. And this isn't that you can't succeed with that. There's many teams that have like won worlds with a player who is good at one style, or done very well, at least regionally, with a player who's good at one style.
And no, we're talking exclusively in this situation. There was more options available to Cloud9, and they eventually started playing better. Yeah, so I think tough break for TSM fans, all things considered, for how this season went. And it's going to be a hard offseason to determine what to do.
The last thing I'll say is there was, I think it was an interview that some people were kind of thinking that Jiizuke gave that like was hinting that he might not be back. And if that's true, I'm actually going to be so sad. I really hope he stays in NA, and I really hope he doesn't retire. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I definitely have some things I want to say about EG.
Okay, because like, I really hope that he stays around. I actually think Jiizuke over the last couple of years has just been my favorite player to watch. He's just so fun.
He's great on content.
Yeah, he's great on content. He gives good sound bites. He trash talks in game. He's hilarious. Like, and he's incredibly good at his style. Like he does have bad games, but his best is really damn good, and he's so fun to watch. So I really hope that he stays around and that they can continue to build. And I'm obviously so excited for Danny and his future. I think everyone is kind of like unanimously excited for that.
I think EG, what I was going to say with this whole, like, what do they do now? I'm excited to see, because they have the jungle situation that ideally you do resolve. 6-man rosters are a thing. And I know you want to be like, oh, well, this jungler got to watch the game with me and you study their patterns and habits. And it's like, I'd really just rather have my best jungler all the time, generally. So I think that there is still room for this team, even if they don't change anything, to continue to improve. So EG, that was my eulogy I want to throw on them, is that they were super fun to watch all year long, to that point about Jiizuke, and I hope he's around again.
Yep. I think they sell one of their junglers, make some money.
They better.
Why not? They're spending a lot of money too. I think people talk a lot less about EG, but like they came into the league and they're like, we're going to take down TSM and whatever, right? And they have spent. My understanding is that some of their like biggest swings, so to speak, they haven't been able to actually make happen. So some of the like really big name players that they were going for just didn't want to go there. And that's also one of the struggles, I think, of orgs that don't have the history of some of the other orgs, is that it's harder to get players to come to you. It's harder to get players to join your team if you don't have a history of titles, if you don't have a history of international success or whatever. Some of these players just won't even consider it, even if you're offering them a lot of money. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, because as much as like, yeah, they can improve, and yeah, like and people maybe didn't expect them to get top 3, I think that EG probably wants those results. Like they want to make worlds. They are spending a lot of money. Impact is not cheap. I don't think Jiizuke is cheap. Ignar, was not cheap. Like they have 2 good junglers, right? Like Svenskeren was coming off of all these titles with TSM and stuff. Yep. So I do think that they are spending a lot of money and probably are going to be hunting for improvements.
On to this weekend's games, my good sir. All right, Saturday semifinals, 100 Thieves versus EC9.
EC9.
Well, I don't know where that E came from.
Elite Cloud9.
Yeah. Leaked a sponsor.
Electronic Cloud9.
It's FTX TSM, and it's EC9.
Wow. I think that's, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm sure that's an acronym for something, an initialism for something, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, so yeah, gonna be fun. Let's move on to an actual topic.
That start with E.
Yes. Yeah. Damn right there are.
I mean, this is fun. My first instinct is I favor 100 Thieves. I think mid lane matchup is going to feel a lot better, right? You're going to have the same flexibility for Abadaga. I think Closer definitively a better jungler than Blabber. I mean, I would have said the same for Spica, and hey, Blabber still got the better from kind of overall. But I mean, the matches all feel good. I'm expecting like a lot more bot lane domination. The fact that Huhi and FBI can actually play through lane and have a different look there. Obviously, they can do it with Someday as well. When he gets counterpicked, they do really, really well actually. When he plays for lane dominance, like if he's on Renekton, they're okay. Well, we're just gonna win through that lane now. So yeah, I think it can look really good for 100 Thieves. I think they match up well. I think they win.
So I think 100 Thieves is the favorite on paper, but the C9 is kind of like this dice roll every time they come out there. You're like, I don't know what you're going to do. Even in the same series, like that first Aurelia game, I was like, wee.
And the Diana game, Diana was worse than the Aurelia, even though everyone just was talking about the Aurelia.
I think it's just like the alts, like
the missed alts.
Those things, like just because even, I think was it tactical or someone was clipping them and said like, I've seen this before. I think it was tactical.
Yeah.
And he had the picture of it from Worlds and then the picture of it from this game. And then there's
yeah.
another one from game 5, or maybe it was later in that game.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was really funny. But then to bounce back even within the same series, pick a game 5 and then have a much better performance on that single champion. It's like, wow, even game to game, it's kind of like, what are we getting? Roll the dice. So it does make it scary to predict against them.
Yeah. I mean, my general feeling is I predicted against them earlier and they won, right? They won their series and they continued on. I feel like the smart money is on 100 Thieves. But I think that I actually feel like Cloud9 has the highest peak of any team in the
Gamblers go with C9.
I think
Smart money here, gamblers go here. Let's go.
I mean, it's just like if every team plays their absolute best, who wins the LCS? And I feel like it's Cloud9. And I think that like you can make arguments against it, of course, but I just think that the peak of all these players is so high and has been so high in NA at a number of different times. So to me, it's like, I don't know, man. I find it difficult to bet against them. I know like the clutch factor always feels so bad, but every time I go with my brain, I bet against Cloud9.
Yeah.
Literally, so I've lost 3 bets on the dive. All 3 of them were betting against Cloud9.
Yeah, I've also lost a bet.
And
on
people
the
are
dive
always
against
like,
Cloud9.
I'm such a C9 fanboy.
Yeah.
Well, people say I'm a fanboy for every team because every fan says you're a fan for the team against them.
Yeah.
But like, that one's the one I've probably gotten the most, which is ironic because every official bet I've ever made on broadcast has been against Cloud9, and I've also lost every single one.
When are you gonna have to learn your lesson, old man? You
Yeah.
SpongeBob me.
And so I'm just like, as soon as I bet on them, I'm also gonna lose that bet.
Yeah.
I just feel it in my bones. So
Abstain.
yeah, but I do feel like Cloud9 at their peak is so damn good. I mean, Closer, I think, yeah, he's been better throughout playoffs than Blabber for sure. But I think that like peak in NA, guess what? Blabber's won 2 MVPs. Like him at his best is incredible. Even against Spica, who I thought Spica was actually much better in that series. I think Blabber still had some really good moments, some really good games.
And then close
Perkz, I think like clearly his peaks is not even arguable. He's had higher
really
peaks than Abadaga. Like even within that series, his Syndra game, his Aurelia game, both of them he went legendary. It was just like insane. In that Rise game that he played, that should have been really unwinnable. And I think obviously it's part column A of like, ooh, TSM, you should have closed that out, and part column B of like, wow, good job, Cloud9, you played that smart. But he was the one facilitating the backdoors and TPing into the base and taking the inhib and like actually opening up pressure, which allows them to take away the dragon and so on and so forth. So like his best is incredible. I do think that Vulcan and Zven aren't as good in lane, but I think that at their best they're as good in team fighting. And I think that like I like Vulcan as a roamer more than Huhi. I mean, it's going to be an interesting one. I think both teams are really, really good. I actually think the biggest mismatch in my head, it's funny to say, is Someday and Fudge. I think Fudge is actually just better than Someday, because I don't think that Someday, as much as he can play carries and have good games, like series on the line, he's just never the guy ever. He's never the guy that carries his team to win. It just doesn't happen. Like, he has had individual good games. You can point to individual good games. Most of them are on Renekton. He's had incredible Renekton games in regular season and stuff, but like, he's never been the carry threat. And I do think that that's different with Fudge. Fudge feels like he can be the guy. I think that as far as like average player skill, it's similar, and it's similar in many roles, which is why I think it's going to be such a good series. But if they're playing at their best, I like Cloud9 over everyone. So it's just like, are they going to be that? Because I also wouldn't be shocked if they got 3-0. If they,
I think the top lane thing is the most interesting part of it for me, because Someday in the series versus EG he has a very standard champion pool. He does not really have like this counter pick that's coming out and you're like, whoa, crap, that's crazy. Like, okay, Gwen still came out in the right situation against the Nocturne, even though it's not really seen that much right now, and it worked beautifully. Like, good job, Fudge. You have that advantage about this flexibility we've been talking about. It's like Gnar, Renekton, GP, whatever the standard kind of meta golem. Ornn is the last
against
one.
Alphari, right?
Sure. Yeah, but so that what's interesting to me is the flexibility of the two, where it felt like they didn't even want to try to go at Alphari. They watched the TSM series. They're like, screw that, playing the skill matchups. We're going to take Ornn every time, basically. Yep. Whereas in the EG series, he played GP, he played Renekton, and he played Gnar. So going up against Fudge, I want to see what the strategy that Reaper comes up with the rest of the team, to be like, how are we dealing with Fudge? Is it let's try and scrap him and actually beat him, or is it let's kind of ignore him and focus on FBI? Because as you're saying, Lost in Sword Art got some 2v2 kills against that bot lane, and even though I think like the Jin game was great by Zven and he played team fights really well, there were some laning weaknesses.
Yeah. You talked about players at their peak. I'm just wondering if any team actually beats TL at their peak on the same side, because
that's definitely the
hands down, Alphari's clapping everybody in that lane. Like, maybe even in the world. Like, I'm saying maybe, I'm not saying definitely, but like, he's up there.
Let's 100% greatest top laner here on the dive. Phreak guarantees.
Like, I want to see if we get, Keen versus Alphari, and it's like, yo, but what if he wins that? Because he can, like, that's hype. But like,
it would not be surprising to me if he beat literally anyone in the world in top lane. Exactly. I will say that.
Yeah. So it's like, he totally can.
Maybe not, because there's going to be other players as good. But like,
and jungler and top lane are going to influence
of course,
map
of course.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. It's like, okay, peak Santorin is maybe not quite to peak Blabber, or I think, Blabber is maybe the best. Like, if we're only measuring peaks, maybe Blabber is the best jungler in the LCS. But like, Santorin's probably my second place for that one. CoreJJ in the world is maybe the best support of all time. Yep. Like, truly. It's like, well, you've got like actually in the world #1 candidates. So have fun with that one, right? And then like, okay,
I like how you conveniently skipped over Tactical and Jensen
Tactical's
versus
not
Perkz.
there. Jensen is not close to Perkz either, right? Yeah. Like, and yes, those are going to matter, right? Those are very relevant differences. But like, as far as peaks are concerned, like, well, welcome your other lane mate Alphari. It's CoreJJ. It's like, well, that's a 2-on-2 you aren't winning for actually any other team, not only in the LCS, but maybe even in the world. So it's like, well, that's Steel's win condition, and it has been the entire run through, and don't stop them yet. Well, at their peak, they're just going to win this league. Yeah. So that is what we're looking at. Tactical obviously has shown he's good at playing like weak side Ziggs. Like, that's great. Like, Ziggs can play well as strong side, where we're going to push the turret down, get some plates, roam to Herald, finish the turret, and then move him to like go clean stuff up. But he's also a great weak side champion. He's natural escapes. He's really absurd wave clear. You almost can't dive him because he'll knock the wave down. And then like, hey, if he has picks other than Ziggs that can also play permanent weak side, and you have your 5% duo proc CoreJJ, it's like, well, they've solved League of Legends. Like, until there are no longer good weak side duo laners, and until other people can lane against them, against Alphari as well, they've solved League of Legends right now. I feel like that's kind of where I see TL at their peak are.
I mean, to me, you pick it, like, if CoreJJ is just going to roam perma roam, you just pick an enchanter and you take the tower, right? Like,
if you can.
Yeah, but
like I truly don't know if you can dive as Ziggs with like Ashnami.
I actually don't think that he can approach the wave ever then, right? Like it's one or the other, right? Like if he clears the wave and you have Ashnami standing in between you and the minions, you don't even get experience, right? Like, so I do think that there are lanes strong enough that should be able to punish this roam style in one way or the other with literally permanently freezing and zoning you off experience. Or if he allows the wave to push in, then you stack waves and then you dive, right? Like you hold the wave forever, you get 3 waves, your jungler comes down, all of a sudden, ooh, that's hard. So I think there are ways to punish it, but like I agree, it's really cool. And as far as like talking about peaks, like it's like kind of just it's an ethereal thing, right? And I realize that when I'm talking about Cloud9. I mean, ever since TL won their second series, I've thought that they were like massive favorites to win the championship. I think that they're playing like, as far as current League of Legends, they're playing by far the best in the league, right? Like I think TL is going to win. I would be surprised if they don't, but I do think if there's one team that can do it, as much as I think that 100 Thieves has looked better in the playoffs overall, I feel they are less likely to beat TL. I could more see C9 beating TL. I just don't think you can sell me on 100 Thieves being the champions. I just don't think it's like a bridge I'm willing to buy.
I was been like confused this whole time. I was like, how do we get from 100 Thieves C9 matchup
the
to
next one?
Yeah,
because he started talking about. I started talking about peak.
I know, I got it, but then I was like, guys, what do we?
We're talking about the finals
you just
weekend.
Said, well, I know, but it's funny because you said 100 Thieves is your favorite to win. Then you're like, but when they go up against each other, C9 and TL do this. And I'm like, bro, you're not even predicting that. Why? Just ignore Azael's question.
He's saying Cloud9
You
goes.
just tell him, I don't care if C9 is the best peaks. They're in the valley right now. Boom! Argument ended.
Good job.
I don't care.
It's 3 teams, right? We can't talk about
Perkz
all
3 years
all the
ago was
weekends.
incredible.
Yeah.
Right
Talk
now.
about all 3 teams. There's several permutations.
Perkz this last weekend was incredible in the last two games.
If you ignore the ones that he won.
Yeah.
It's the funny thing
Well, that's
about
the point, is that they're inconsistent, but their highs are so high.
I just thought it was funny that we went so far down the peak rabbit hole.
Because it's a fun discussion.
it is a fun
Mark.
discussion.
I was like,
Yeah,
we're
Mark,
talking about
Lighten
Don't you
up.
like fun, Mark?
no, I
curmudgeon.
hate it. Fundamentally, I think it's bad.
You're fundamentally bad.
Big Brother had it right. No,
right.
I don't know.
What?
That's like the whole thing. Is you don't have emotions.
Oh, okay, sure.
All right, continue,
Great.
Mark.
Anyways, as I was saying, 100 Thieves, I'm actually more with you. I actually think that you're saying there's no way that anyone can beat TL. They just don't play their game. I thought what 100 Thieves did was largely correct in their series about the whole ignore someday kind of thing. I just think they went too far sometimes with this scaling identity. I think their game 1 draft was a total punt. I think their game 5 draft you could criticize a little bit. And I'm not putting this on Reaper, by the way, because people love to just throw it on the coach. But I think the full scaling idea with like a Felios, Rise, Ornn, Leona, Lee is like, well, you have to fight Team Liquid a little bit in the early game, because I do think Team Liquid's the best team in the league mid to late. So like, I think there's a world where 100 Thieves had a decent game plan, but just made some mistakes in doing it. And of course, TL can adapt their game plan too. But I think it's not a total lock-in for me for TL winning the whole thing. And I think there's a world where if 100 Thieves can get past C9, which is still a big test in its own right, then they can still actually challenge TL pretty well. Because it was a 5-game series.
It was.
And they almost won that game. We were all... Dude, you and me were on the same energy about that Tom Kench last pick.
Tom Kench was absolutely
You
trolling.
fired
It's
your
garbage.
tweet off before I did, so I memed you instead. But otherwise, there were so many team fights where Tom Kench is just like...
Yeah, support Tom Kench literally does nothing. Oh, well, okay,
Like, right?
he's an ultimate.
He's in. This is Tom Kench for the entire team fight. Just...
Why is the camera on me? Show Mark. There you go.
The one that TL won in bot jungle on their own side, he literally just stood next to Xin, and like you can maybe argue it made 100 Thieves scared to kill the Xin, but he literally any engaged support there just insta wins the team fight, and instead he just had to do nothing.
I mean, he's CoreJJ, so he played it well, and
He had a good knock up in the one fight that they won.
Yeah, and he had good ults, but like, I just think support Tom Kench is actually griefing. Like, I think it's so bad.
terrible.
You are so squishy. You can't W in offensively, so you can't engage. So you're literally just your devour. And people are like, but it has an HP shield. Well, yeah, it also has a 2-minute cooldown. Like, it's so bad.
You eat the guy.
Have you met
with the
Janna?
shield.
Yeah.
She also does this.
Well, also what usually happens is the guy you need to save with the shield gets chunked to 10% HP. You save him, and then he's at 10% HP with a shield that's going to time
and
out.
Tom Kench dies to devour.
Yeah, he died. It literally happened like 3 fights in a row. I thought TL was going to lose that series.
So here's my thing is like that was a really close series. I felt that TL and their losses played abnormally bad. Game 2 especially was actually horrible from them. And so it felt like that was pretty below their normal level.
Well, and they threw a game that they could have 3-1 the series.
Yeah, exactly. So there was those two things. I'm like, I looked at the losses. There was like the Zig set game where like Tactical and CoreJJ just like were like sprinting it down as fast as possible, and like that was he was 0-6 on set, right? Like how many games do you see that from CoreJJ? Almost never, right? So that I know this is going to be a defeatist argument, and like people are going to be frustrated by it from 100 Thieves. I think 100 Thieves is a good team. I actually think they're more likely to beat C9. I just can't in my head see them beating TL. I just can't picture it. I think that unless TL plays way below their level, there's no way they lose 100 Thieves. Where I actually think that if Cloud9 flips heads or whatever you want to say, they have a chance to beat them. So my prediction is actually 100 Thieves beat C9 and then lose to TL. But I think it would make for more exciting finals if Cloud9 wins, because I can believe that Cloud9 on their best day beats TL, and right now I just don't see it from 100 Thieves.
Here's what I like about it is both teams have a good little story to go into against Team Liquid. C9, if they make it, it's
a good little story.
Good little story to get behind. C9, it's the third time they're playing. They've played all the finals against each other. It's cool to have like the who's going to get the final word in. TL took one, C9 took one. Here we go.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. For 100 Thieves, as one of the best new orgs since franchising, they only made the finals in their first split, and then it was the fastest finals of all time that they lost to Team Liquid in that split. And Sumday's the only returning member from it. So I think there is like also a cool narrative storyline for 100 Thieves trying to get their revenge against Team Liquid.
I feel like the revenge story is fraudulent.
I think
literally all the staff is gone and only Sumday's there, and he probably doesn't even care.
Steve.
So to me, it's actually like, I know people keep saying this revenge thing. I'm like, this is the most fraudulent storyline.
So here's where, hey,
I think it's cool. But who cares about that? They matched up like years ago.
There's probably there's probably some 100 Thieves fans
don't care. I don't buy it.
If you were a 100 Thieves fan 3 years ago and you're
just hungry for revenge, and
you were salty
years.
about getting slapped down that hard, and you love your apparel company, and you want to see them get revenge against the whole.
It. I think it's cool.
Leave
because
a comment if you agree.
I think it's cool.
It matters to the fan
because it's a new champion. And because it's a new org winning a title, and it's showing like, hey, like this is a blueprint for how a team can become great in this league. And I think that would be a really cool fucking story.
There's good stories.
And I would be really excited for a lot of these players, for FBI winning a title here, kind of maybe establishing himself as like the best AD in the league. People have talked about him being the best performing, but like winning a title does a lot for your legacy and does a lot for how people see you big picture. Yeah. Like Closer has had some ups and downs. Someday as well. Someday's been here for how friggin' long? He came here,
like
when he came here,
6 years.
People were talking about him as like top 3 top laners in the world. It was not like this is your retirement home someday. It was like, holy shit, we actually got one of the literal best players in the whole world. Yeah. And he's going to come here now while he's the best, and he's never won. So like there's so many cool storylines. I'm not trying to poo-poo that. I'm just saying like,
oh, I know.
The revenge thing is actually the worst storyline of all of them.
It's the best storyline, and leave a comment.
I will battle it very slightly. So there was an interview from, I want to say it was Power Evil, before the last Cloud9, obviously. But he's like, I know Speak is the only returning member from last time, but the whole TSM lower bracket run to win LCS, like if we beat Cloud9, I'm gonna feel that, and I want to bring that back, even though I wasn't part of it. And so he's like, because you're wearing the same color jersey, because there's even one player who was there, it's like, but it was this team, and so I can believe it, and like if the actual players believe it, then like that's actually the end all be all.
I'm gonna find one of the players this weekend.
Do you feel like
I'm gonna pay him. I'm gonna be like, I gotta prove Azael wrong. Closer, tell me how salty you were.
Like literally no coaches, literally no supporting staff.
Someday,
I mean, that's the same thing when Samsung Galaxy went back to Worlds.
Just someday, just can't sleep at night.
I'm like, someday, how
throwing darts at a poster of Steve, like
Impact, Smithy, Ole, and Double Lift.
He buys TL apparel to burn it, and
jeez, Yeah, that is the same thing happened with Samsung Galaxy though. Like Samsung White won Worlds, and then all of one assistant coach was left on the roster when Samsung Galaxy came back the next year, and it's like, and then eventually they won the year after. It's like, it's the second Samsung Worlds win, but like there is no connective tissue here.
I always think it's like the revenge stories are fun.
Yeah,
and I think it's really true when it's fresh. When it's fresh, and I talk to a player, they're like, yeah, I want to beat them, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to show them that they were wrong to get rid of me and that sort of stuff. But almost never when I'm talking to people, I'm like, how you feeling about this rivalry?
So I think you're too close to the player angle, because I think for owners it matters too. I think owners and investors and those kind of people get involved, which is like higher level staff. But like I'm sure
more so than all the teams that kicked them out of playoffs over the last couple of years.
Probably. I mean, one's a more public failure. Like, you're mad about getting embarrassed, probably.
I would also say, sorry.
Yeah. So, anyways, I would say, like, players, I understand. They have no history to it. They don't care, sure, whatever. But fans, and I think
the fan angle.
Some staff people will care.
The fan angle is a big one for me, because if you are a 100 Thieves fan, to your point to camera, it's like, if you're a 100 Thieves fan, you're like, we're going back to finals, and we're going to beat Team Liquid this time. Like, that is there if you're a 100 Thieves fan. Like I have no doubt that for a large section of the fan base, that is there.
I'm interested. I'm now really curious about this, because it was also, 3 years ago, right?
Yeah. League churn is, like, not negligible.
Of course. There's lots of new fans coming in and coming out. I just think it's like, it's there, but it's like the least interesting storyline to me. There's so many.
You're the least interesting storyline, dude.
Well,
that's true. I can't think of any stories about Azael that I care about.
We're on the same wavelength.
You said 100 Thieves win, then lose to TL. Did you give game scores?
No.
6-0.
I mean, if I'm going with my brain, it's like 3-1 100 Thieves, and then I think they get one game maybe in the finals. But if I'm going with my heart, because I'm always wrong with my brain, then C9 wins, and I think that would be a closer series. I know this literally makes no sense, and this is just based off of like.
I feel like you always get that brain gut duality sometimes, where you're like, well, this is what I'm.
Well, I always go with my brain, right?
Yeah.
And every time with Cloud9, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe I should just go against my brain now. Yeah. Maybe I just have a peanut brain. I need to start betting, just blindly bet on Cloud9 every time.
The problem with peanuts is like the shells have wrinkles. You don't even have that.
I'm just a marble.
You're the peanut.
Yeah, you have marble brain.
He's
I'm an anti-friction.
Oh yeah. It's just the peanut inside. There's no shell.
Yeah.
All right.
I will say, man.
What are you saying? What are you saying? 100 Thieves and then TL.
I'm gonna say C9 then, to be different.
Wow.
That's the weakest. That's like even worse than my.
All right, so our second Twitter
yours,
question.
He gives two predictions and then doesn't actually commit to
Well,
either.
I committed to the TL win and to 100 Thieves.
And then you copy out it with another prediction. At least I'm taking one. You put both out.
The worst prediction of all are when you say, here's my prediction to be different, aka here's my prediction that I don't believe. Here's the opposite of what I think I can put it down on paper.
I think you're wrong, and I'm trying to dodge you. Whatever you think is wrong, as we've highlighted. What is Tim?
True, yeah.
What is Tim voting? Tim Sevic Houston has been wrong about, like, I think literally every playoff series, aside from like maybe the Dig ones.
I mean, it's hard to get the Dig and Immortals ones wrong.
Yeah. I think he might have got the Immortals too. I would need to check. He's got every important
There's
one.
no way. Oh, no, he did, didn't he?
I think he might have gotten the
like he did like Immortals TSM. Yeah, he did actually.
I don't know.
That's really dumb.
I'll flop whatever the opposite of Tim says for these series, but otherwise I'd say C9 then TL.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree TL is playing by far the best League of Legends right now in the league, and I think that. It's going to be really exciting, right? Because I do think that any of these teams at their peak could win. I think that TL is heavily favored based on what they've shown, but I also think C9, if they show up and play their best, they could easily be champions too. So I'm really, really excited for the finals for the three teams and for the potential of these teams going international. It's going to be good, and I'm super invested to hear if 100 Thieves fans actually care about a revenge match.
They do.
With TL. We're going to find out.
We are going to find out very soon.
Tweet at Azael too.
Yeah,
that's even more obnoxious than
definitely
YouTube replies, because he doesn't always check. You check YouTube comments.
Sometimes.
You don't get
tweet at Azael if you care.
Harder,
and even if you don't, just lie to make me look right.
Also, speaking of YouTube comments, I shaved my head today before I came, so it could be shinier.
Did you like baby oil it?
No, I've literally never done that.
Did not.
I actually used I got some like beard oil. I feel like it's probably one of those placebo things that does nothing. They like say all these like effects that it's supposed to have, like
it smell like it's softer.
I don't know. It smells nice. That's the only reason I use.
It's cologne
but it's
you put on your face.
Make your beard healthier and more luscious and all these things. And I'm like, it probably doesn't do that. I'm probably just like
moisturize
my head.
Yeah.
I use some you just use like conditioner and shampoo. You're supposed to use it on your head.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know anything.
That's what I've read.
I don't moisturize anything anyways. So I don't.
Well, I don't really use lotions or anything like that.
I'm supposed to because I'm gonna get horrible.
But the point was maybe my beard is shinier. I can't tell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so other than the fact that everyone should moisturize, let's move on to our second Twitter question, which is the last one of LCS 2021, last one of the summer split, last one of the year. Okay, so from Rox Omega says, how important are off-meta pocket picks going international play? Like, we talked about it very briefly, Adams Darius, Bjergsen Zillion, etc. I think it's a big deal. I think if you kind of talked about like playing multiple styles at a very high level, but especially if you have champions that you can play to that same S tier, right? To your premier level that are effective to that level, that only you play, no one else does. It's like, well, they either can't like checkmate your pool and draft, or they have to throw away bans at whatever you have.
Mm-hmm.
And then just have fewer bans for like the rest of the stuff that you're supposed to trade back and forth, right? So, you know, if you randomly have, let's say Karthus jungle, and it's to the level of like the Speak of Lee Sin and the Xin Jiao and whatnot, it's like, oh yeah, so by the way, I don't care if you first pick Lee Sin, because I would literally just play as well as you on this Karthus that no one else plays. Or you can be down a ban, and then we'll just play the same trading game, but you're down a ban. So like, if it's there, it's just like, it's always a win. But again, it has to like, you have to, you know, play the champion and then play team comps to the same level as like, you know, the meta comps, like assuming they even are strong.
Right. There's a reason it's not meta, and you have to be able to deal with that fact.
Sure.
And if it's a pocket pick, you probably can. And I think they are really important, especially in counter pick situations like the Darius into the Camille, because it's like, I bully melee matchups and you wanted to snowball the Camille kind of thing. Or the Nocturne Gwen situation that happened in game 5, both game 5 situations that were pretty impactful in the top lane. So I do think it really matters. If you have this thing that they're going to have less experience on than you're going to be able to play the matchup better, and you have carry potential, especially, like, I feel like that is huge in a game 5.
I'm surprised that I'm on the opposite side of this, because I'm such a big fan of champion diversity.
Okay.
And then you're just,
but when I think about like worlds historically, I'm like, a lot of the teams that won didn't actually have any like weird pick. Like, they just played everything really well. That was like a lot of the teams that won didn't have anything that was like super out of left field. There are famous instances of it, of course, like the MF support and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. But like IG and so on, like a lot of these teams played just like really well. Dom1, I don't think Dom1 played anything that I can recall that was like, holy shit, they brought out this.
FunPlus did it.
Like, FunPlus
yeah,
did.
It's like one out of 3 that you know you have one of those, right?
Yep.
Doing B is a prime example. But
then prior to that, it was mostly like the teams are flexible, can play different styles. Yep. But as far as like off meta pocket pick, to me makes it sound like, ooh, it's like Froggen's Anivia, or like Adam's Darius, or it's Huhi's Aurelian Soul, or it's, you know, it's like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I think largely the teams that win often don't have that. I do think it is an advantage, and I do think being able to play a lot of styles and have a deep champion pool, and this is part of that, to be fair.
Sure.
That really matters, but like, is it an important criteria to international success that like you have your like weird pocket pick?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'll see your point in like, it doesn't have to be important. You can be the best team and play entirely bog standard and just like, yep, there is one style and we're just going to play that style.
Welcome to SKT for many years.
Sure. Even then though, right, like there were times where, well, they were really, really big on top lane, right? Yep. With Marin, he was actually, I think, finals MVP because he just, you know, was really good. And so instead of playing through Faker, they played through top lane.
Yep.
Obviously Faker was still good, but whatever. I think of the year Samsung Galaxy won Worlds, and it was like, actually everyone realized we should just all be buying Ardent Sensor. And then it's like, no, we're really, really, really just going to play through bot lane. And if you go like back and watch the SKT Samsung finals, it's like, okay, Ruler and CoreJJ won, but the rest of the map was generally losing. That's okay, because winning through bot was good enough. And it's like, when could you identify that playing through bot was correct? I know I'm kind of broadening it more to like...
Is that an off-meta pocket pick, though?
Well, so, I mean, the idea is...
You're playing a different style, right?
Right.
But like,
and that means the champions are playing a different, right? Like, imagine, I'm kind of going in a rabbit hole, but like, imagine you're the ones playing Lulu with Ardent Sensor first for everyone else. It's off meta, but it's actually the best.
Yeah.
And again, I'm moving the question a little bit around, but like, I usually don't think League is ever solved. And so it's just like, well, you should actually just play what wins you games. And I think people just tend to, because it's easy. Oh, I can just copy Dumb Monkey, or I can just copy FunPlus, or I can just copy IG. And, you know, now we're just going to play this style because there's evidence that it works. But I think there are a lot of styles that just aren't picked up on that just are good and you could have been doing. And you can just do this as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I would like, how important is it was the Twitter question. And it's less important than playing the meta well, usually. And I think that's why, to your point, that the best team in the world often is more standard-ish in a lot of instances.
So then I'm going to instantly jump into you and say, is the meta hard play around top lane? Because Teal's about to win LCS doing that.
No, but they're also probably not going to win the world doing that. I don't know. We'll see.
Right, but that's kind of the point, right? It's like, well, okay, maybe they don't win the world championship, but no one from the LCS ever does. It's like,
again, I guess this is just getting like does go down a rabbit hole a bit. But I know. Like, I would argue that is a play style. Again, that is not a unique meta pocket pick. That is literally Jace every game, right? Which is like the most standard. So I think again, it like, we're somewhat conflating multiple factors.
Yeah, so here's what I was going to say.
Okay,
Going back to Suning versus Damwon, they played Rengar in the one game that they won, which if I remember was not a jungle.
That was an off-meta pocket.
It was an off-meta pocket pick that won them the one game.
And it was tank Rengar, which made it more weird.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't even remember if it was impactful.
It was in that game. SFM, yeah. And
they would have got 3-0 potentially if they just played the meta.
Yep.
And so I think to that point, playing the meta is the most important thing you can do, well.
It's an advantage though.
Yes. And so if you have something a wrinkle you can throw, I think that it is pretty important, and it can be the straw that breaks the camel's back more than like, hey, you won the world championship because you had cool picks.
Yeah.
To that point.
And especially if you are battling uphill, I think it becomes more important. I think when you're talking about like winning worlds, it's largely not the reason. It's just like, you know, okay, this team's just better than you.
If it was a 5-game series and 5th game you get one of these counter picks that just happened this weekend, then I would be like, yeah, that might have just won you worlds.
Yeah.
But you were not in the world finals because you could do that.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of it, when you look at like, ooh, big upsets or like cool moments, a lot of it was around these different picks that people brought out, right? When you think about worlds and you think about unexpected things. And
Zyra kept them in the series.
The Zyra keeps in the series with MF or like MF or, you know, Aurelion Soul roam at level 1 MSI, or you know, the Marines, Gam Marines or whatever, bringing out their Nocturne, or when the Russian team, I can't even remember their name now.
Albus Nox Luna,
when they brought out like, they had like brand support and they had different stuff, right? Like almost everyone that is like the really like, ooh, unexpected. Those are huge advantages in that. I just don't always think it gets you to winning worlds. So it's like based on your goals, but it is always an advantage. Even if you don't use it, it's an advantage because I think to your point, Phreak, people then have to respect it in pick ban. And sometimes even if you have zero intention of playing that pocket pick, the whole series, it just gets banned anyway.
Yep. I will self-defeat really quickly, which is, so on the current LCS patch across top regions, the top 6 most played top laners are Jace, Renekton, Gnar, Camille, Gangplank, Kennen.
Yeah.
If you look at Alphari's top 5 most played champions, Renekton, Gangplank, Gnar, Kennen, Camille.
Yeah.
It's like, And he's not, like, all time across his entire player career. So it's like, oh, turns out he's literally just playing the meta.
He is the meta.
And again, it's not just like, well, everyone's watching Alphari. It's like, no, literally the current pro meta is exactly revolving around his champion pool, and oh, look, he's doing well. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
So, okay.
So Alphari is not really good. It's just the meta.
He's not a good.
But they are playing a different style.
They are playing a different style. Which is
that is a different thing, but it's equally important. And sometimes that can be just as big. I actually think that's even bigger because stylistic stuff, I think, often is dictated by who's doing well at Worlds and stuff. And if you are playing, like so many teams have come from NA and said like, our style wasn't what the meta was, or what wasn't like, didn't fit at Worlds. So they had to relearn. And I do think like having a defined proactive style is a big boon to you internationally, instead of just, we are going to play slow and scale, which is what many of our previous champions have been. And then they have struggled to adapt to a more aggressive, more proactive style. And hopefully TL's style, you know, I think it is contingent upon Alphari being lane dominant. If he is not lane dominant against the best LCK and LPL players, well, maybe your strategy doesn't work anymore. But if he is, hey, it's cool. It's a cool way.
Is it play style problem or just like team gap?
Probably just everything gap. Yep. Sweet.
Great, we did it.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode. This was a fun one. This was kind of like
kind of went down some rabbit holes.
This was
I think rabbit holes are fun.
I do too. And this was like a feisty one, Mark. You're like a good.
I don't know why. I've just been messing with you a lot more the last week. Like
That's
me
fine.
lying
Good.
in the morning about where I was, and then lying about how long my hair takes. You know,
these are the dumbest, most
I just
easy
lie. I just feel like
lies.
lying
Tell
to you
that
about
story.
everything. I don't know. Something about you. I just gotta lie.
Yeah,
to
we're
your
doing a
face.
Strikecast. Mark just like wanders in 25 minutes after our call time.
15.
No, it was actually
It was 25. You're right.
So 25 minutes late.
Well, I
don't care, Mark. Let me tell the story. So I
wrong.
had been actively looking for him. So I went to the caster desk. He's not there. I go over to where the casters hang out when they're not like doing rehearsal. He's not there. I ask people in both places if anyone has seen Mark. Everyone says no, he's not here. I'm like, okay. Then Phreak and I are sitting after doing the rehearsal where Mark wasn't there.
There was no rehearsal, was there?
It was a little brief thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We're in the green room. Mark shows up and he's like, yeah, it's so weird being a caster, just wandering around for 25 minutes, like trying to
Don't know where to go.
Trying to play it off like he's been here the whole time. And
So
I
this dude's
actively
just changing the story so much.
No, that's really close to
That's literally
accurate.
the
pretty
story.
close.
That's
It's
really
pretty
close to accurate.
It's pretty close. But so one, Uber right now is a bit of a disaster, as everyone knows.
Great. Okay.
For what it's worth, I didn't even care that you were late. I just thought it was hilarious.
You obviously care. You brought it up like 7 times in the last 2
It's
days.
the fact
You
that you
just
lied.
brought it up.
If
You
you were
brought it
just
up.
late, I was like, oh yeah,
You
sorry, my
literally
ride
just
was
said
late.
I was
brought it up
No
in
one would have
passing
cared.
fashion, and you were like, guys, we can't end the dive, even though we're out of talking points, and our producer's typing it to laugh it up. You had to tell.
Phreak told me to tell the story.
I said, do you want to tell the story?
He
Because
wanted
it got
he was
brought up really
dying.
briefly. You guys started talking about lying to each other. You brought it up. You
I
opened
brought
this can
lying
of
to-
worms.
He's the one who's like, I have.
All right, that'll wrap
Like,
it up
I
for
have
us
to lie to
now.
Azael at all
Wrap it up.
times.
It was a
Thanks again
I
to
didn't lie. It
Honda
was
for
a
making making this episode possible. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive when we return. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor FM. And thank you, all of you, for your questions on Twitter and use the hashtag TheDiveLOL. Remember the LOL at the end. Finally, thank you for all your anchor questions this year. The finals of the LCS Summer Split are this weekend. 100 Thieves and Cloud9 will face off on Saturday at 2 p.m. We'll be going up against Team Liquid Sunday at 1 p.m. for the title of the LCS Champion. All time slots Pacific time. It's ad-free if you're on the East Coast. Duh. We all know this by now. It's going to be an amazing weekend. Don't miss it. Bye.
Thanks, Honda.